SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network Link 248. I am your Spencer host, filled with Spencer spoilers, Spencer Presley, and joining me for this is a rare, not just a single guest episode of the podcast, because this is a special episode of the podcast where I've brought two people here to discuss all things spoilers for SMT5. So before they even get introduced, do not listen to this if you have not listened or beaten or care about SMT5 spoilers, because experience the game for yourself. But the people who will be spoiling SMT5 with me tonight are the very wonderful, you may know him from Not G4, Mac.
Yeah! Hello.
And believe it or not, Lynn, I don't know if you know this, I have never had more immediate demand for a returning podcast guest than you. Literally, in the last 2 weeks, I have had so many DMs or messages, like on Facebook and stuff, being like, after playing the game for myself, I need to get Lynn back on the show, because it was so funny of just watching people be like, look at this hack, look at this terrible review, and then people would be like, you know what? I may have gone I may have gone a bit far in some places.
Yeah, yep. I've had people send me some things to that effect in the last few weeks.
So yes, if people are not aware, Mac does the YouTubes, or you may find him scrounging around for motherboards at Best Buy. And Lynn, you are a RPG aficionado, now infamous RPG aficionado / freelancer. Thanks to your IGN review of SMT5, which, I don't know about you, I feel like that was like 3 years ago.
It does feel like a million years ago. I mean, this time of year is usually pretty busy, but this year especially has felt like crazy busy for some reason. I think I've published 3 reviews since then, which is like a very unusual pace.
It's I don't know about you guys. Do you feel like it's been lopsided? Like, I feel like, oddly, October and December feel almost busier than November.
I don't know about December, just mainly because I'm not paying too much attention to what's coming out this month.
Halo. It's just all Halo and Big Brain Academy. That's all it is. That's all the kids are talking about.
Yeah, well, and Game Awards, which, like, I'm writing 2 previews. They're going live during the Game Awards when they announce something.
Oh, I
bet
that. I bet
Chrono Trigger Remake and Chrono Cross Remaster. Yeah, we're all very aware.
Chrono Trigger integrated. It's going to be great. Yeah.
October really felt like there was a ton going on, because there was like, oh gosh, what was there? There was Metroid Dread, there was Mario Party. Because we got the review copies for SMT5 in October, it feels like that game came out in October for me.
Right.
100%. Like, when people finally started playing it, I was like, you guys are playing that game?
I beat the game the day before it came out, so it feels like everyone else is like lagging behind. This is the first time I've gotten like such a big game early, so it's like, this is a weird feeling.
So yeah, so we all have played the game and beaten it and everything for that. So instead of in a normal introduction, I kind of figured what might be fun is each of us can kind of give a quick, I guess, like an audible tweet summary of whether it be our review or just our feelings on the game. I'd actually be curious if either of you have your feelings on the game kind of changed since posting your review, because I posted mine less than 2 weeks ago, so I'm still pretty fresh in I really kind of digested on everything. But have either of you like kind of changed or morphed your opinion after posting your video or review?
For me, I would say it's changed somewhat, but it's more so I've like kind of refined my opinion and thought a lot more about it, and I can kind of cite more specifically what I like and dislike about it. But I wouldn't say my opinion has changed like a ton. I will say in that time I have gotten 100% of the game essentially, gotten every demon, every ending, whatever, and it's given me a much greater understanding of what this game does right and what it does wrong. And initially, I'd said, like, I love this game. I specifically said I adore it. And I still really love this game, but I'm much more, like, not wary, but knowledgeable about what it does right and what it does wrong. Mainly, one of the things that I think it's weaker on, I would say story, but I would say characters specifically. They are definitely weaker, just from what I expect out of a modern SMT title, especially one following Strange Journey and 4, which were much more character-oriented or had much better characters than this.
Yeah, I think I very much am in a similar place where my opinion on it hasn't changed that much, but I definitely have gone back through to see, hey, how could I express my disappointments with certain parts of this without mentioning Persona, for instance, just for example, and kind of developing those ideas more, and like finding those specific things that I can point to. That's like, yeah, if you look at this scene, this is exactly what I'm talking about, and things like that. I've only done 2 endings at this point, which I'm sure we'll talk more about endings at some point here. But I haven't done like the secret special true neutral ending or whatever it's
I will pay money for anyone at Atlas Japan to name that fucking ending, because there's no name for it, and I hate that everyone's either like, it's the true ending, it's the secret ending. It's like, when you because like when it came out at launch, you're like, oh, we don't really know the exact specifics, and now that we do, it's like, well, you just got to do the super boss and like make sure you like fill out this like little bit of extra work. It's like it's not enough work. Like, it wasn't like a Kingdom Hearts special ending secret boss fight where we're like, oh my god, dude, this is like a full-time job to get this ending. Like, so it's like it's just like it's like neutral plus is like what I've tried to like refer it to, because like it doesn't feel drastically different. Like, it's not like a true demon ending where you're facing like 19 other bosses. You just get a little bit of an extra twist at the end.
Is there anything after the Lucifer fight in that ending, or is it just
the big interest with that one is that's the only way to fight Lucifer with all of his boss phases. Everyone else is just a normal one phase run, and so if you've ever thought, boy, that last boss fight is a little bit easy in terms of how quickly it's over, it's because then you actually fight all of the forms of Lucifer and not just that one, which is kind of interesting, but in terms of how like kind of works in the story, I liked as a take. But yeah, so like you get a little bit of extra content, but not really. Like the one thing that I thought was a possibility was like, if you got an extra boss, I would have given it to you as maybe that's the true ending. Like, if you let me fight and kill Tao, I would have been like, okay, this is the real ending.
You want to kill Tao?
Well, at least, like, because remember, like, one of the endings, you have the ability to basically say, I'm going to destroy the throne and not do everything you've been telling me I have to do. And you would imagine she would try to kill you, and by proxy, then you would have to kill her to beat the game.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
So, without talking about killing Lucifer, angels, and Tao, and other fun spoiler things for it, yeah, like, for me, I've had a really interesting kind of thing of this of like, I thought of for an uncomfortably long time with titling my review, because I hate videos that do the blank as a masterpiece thing. And even after all of this time, I've like, I think because the way I used it, the verbiage for it, was I consider this like a modern masterpiece, in the sense of like, I've not felt this jolly with a new RPG in a really long time. Because like, I have examples of like RPGs that like really resonated with me, but might have been like twists and other things like that weren't wholly original. Like, as much as I love Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's got a large amount of building blocks it's based off of. But like, for this one with me, it weirdly resonated in ways of like, I love talking to people who definitely don't agree with me on it, but I've not had that coming to Jesus moment of being like, I think I've overpraised this too much. Of like, it's without a doubt like my RPG of the year. It's definitely not my game of the year, but I think that's just because of how strong of a year this has been for overall games in general. But one of the next questions I wanted to kind of ask both of you, because we are recording this before the Game Awards, so Patreon people will be able to hear this before the Game Awards, but everyone else will already know who won what. Do you guys think... Well, here, let me phrase this in two different questions, and then I'll let you go first. Do you think SMT5 has any chance of winning the Game Awards? And do you think it is your personal pick for RPG of the Year?
It's definitely my personal pick for RPG of the Year. I don't think it'll win a Game Award because I think that the Game Awards have finally made it in that they are just as much of kind of a joke in general as the Academy Awards are. So we're on that same level now. I think it's sort of the, and I say this as like somebody who like has some small amount of input on this. Like it's the at least pretty good games that a lot of people in the games press have played awards. Like
I wish we could call it that. Like I will say this. Jeff has the world's best out card because he doesn't nominate anything. He just asks all of these media sites and influencers to nominate it, which I've always kind of thought was the core issue of like when people complain about the Game Award nominees, they're acting like Jeff Keighley personally has a vendetta against Neo: The World Ends With You. When in reality, it's just that no one on game sites cares about half the things people on the internet want to play.
Yes.
I mean, when Crusader Kings 3 got robbed by Microsoft Flight Simulator last year, I was just like, yeah, this is a joke. This is
Flight Sim is going to win again 2 years in a row, and everyone's going to forgot it won this year.
It's not even in best ongoing game. They just let it be in the weird. For some reason, we're combining strategy and sim into a single category because we don't care about it category.
That was kind of what was going on with Among Us last year, where it was in best multiplayer game. And the explanation and the justification for it was like, oh, video games are very different from like movies and TV shows where they can have a life past their initial release, which is very true. But you have an ongoing games category for a reason, and you put it in like multiplayer alongside stuff that came out that year. So it's just this weird like, what is an ongoing game to you guys? I guess.
Yeah.
So then, what do you think will win at the Game Awards then for RPG?
Oh, let me look at the category again.
It's Cyberpunk. Insert laugh track here for Scarlet Nexus. That was like the jump force of RPGs this year. That were like, whoever was voting, they were like, oh shit, what was RPGs this year? That one. That one. And nothing against Scarlet Nexus, but it's like, no one voted with the like intention of this is the RPG of the year. Tales of Arise, SMT5, and there's
Monster
one more
Hunter.
missing.
It's gonna Monster Hunter Rise, I think, is the other one, which I think that'll win just because more people played it.
I thought it wasn't, and then I was going to make a joke because I'm one of those weirdos who's in the camp of I actually don't think of Monster Hunter as an RPG. Now I gotta look.
I'm the kind of person who I typically don't think of it as an RPG, but it's the kind of game where like I'm not going to argue with anyone because when I really think about it, yeah, it is an RPG. I just don't typically think of it as one. It's not like Zelda, where some people argue that it's an RPG, and I legitimately don't fully get why.
You guys are going to be right, and I'm going to feel so stupid and wrong about this. But apparently, best action game and best indie deserve first option for it. Wow, you were right. It was Rise. I don't know why. Like I would not even be mad if Rise got it, but like I feel like Rise is like going to suffer from Hitmanitis of everyone forgot what happened 9 months ago, and no one's going to vote for it.
Maybe.
So what I think is going to happen is, but it should come down. What it's ultimately going to come down to is SMT5 versus Tales of Arise.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Hunter Rise feels like that weird. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it wins, but if it won, it wouldn't necessarily be because it's the best game out of these, but more because it's kind of the most popular mainstream choice, like the easy choice, which normally would have gone to like Cyberpunk, but if Cyberpunk wins Best RPG, people are gonna riot.
Yeah.
I feel like they would
That's even
meme on it
nominated.
before rioting on it. Like I don't think there's
Yeah,
enough
they would-
people who would hate on it that much.
People will meme on it, but then there would be people who just kind of use it as justification, like this is a joke, like even more so. But I think it'll ultimately come down to Tales of Arise versus SMT5, and I haven't played Arise. I really want to. It's
really
on
good.
my list,
It's really good.
but I really don't know which of these two it could come down. I really don't know which of these two it would be. I don't know.
See, like for me, I think Arise it should be tough competition, but I think with the recency of SMT5 being one of the last one of these to release, and Arise was definitely that fans of the genre really like it. Like, you didn't hear a lot of people really advocating for Arise after it had been out, you know?
Yeah, that's true. It was mainly a lot of people who were already into it, were already like talking about, were like loving it.
Mm-hmm. Now, for you though, what would be your RPG of the year though?
It would be SMT5 with the second being Neo World Ends With You. I think as an overall game, Neo World Ends With You is better, just in terms of like the sum of its parts. Once you get across everything, like everything is way more consistently good. But I think SMT5 just has higher highs for me.
I wish I could say one nice thing about the Neo The World Ends With You. I know their fan base is like so passionate, but man, I've never been more turned off by a demo. Like, that game looks really nice in pictures, but when you're playing it, it just feels like the world's like cheapest, like it feels like a budget game, which sucks because it's from Square, but it feels super budget.
It feels like a budget game, definitely. But also, the further in I got, the more I was like, "Oh my god, I love this combat system. This game's so well thought out." The only like real problems I even have with it is just towards the end, the story felt a little messy. It was trying to do too much. But no, it's that I love that game, but the beginning is not the strongest. I will say that.
Okay, well, at least I feel a little better about it, considering the demo is just the beginning of that game, and it already starts pretty messy.
Yeah.
But yeah, enough Neo the Worlds of the Sea slander. We're not here for that spoiler cast just yet. So
the only thing I will say, I will say before moving away from it, the fact that this game was not nominated for best soundtrack is infuriating to me because that soundtrack's phenomenal.
I'll say this in defense of people who didn't vote for it. Obviously, the soundtrack is a lot more of a personal thing since it's not genre specific. I will say you're more inclined to like Neo the World's Ends With You soundtrack because of how much it repurposes the originals. So it's like one of those things of like, I think if you're like a good example of like playing that demo as well, you're hearing a lot of just arrangements and rearrangements from the first game, and like it's still really good music, but it's not like, oh my gosh, like I've never thought that they would do this take of a game or whatever. Like, it wasn't doing any, and I mean, in a definition of apples to oranges here, it's like when you're hearing the same song for the millionth time in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it hits different because of like how much work went into those songs. Whereas like Neo's soundtrack is like, at its best, is like, these are good, but I've never felt like I've never heard songs like this.
Yeah, I could get that.
And that's only to defense. Not even saying that I don't like it. I actually do like a lot of the like design staff and the music production for Neo the World's Ends With You. It's just, I'm thinking again for the people who are voting, you're fighting the uphillist of uphill battles there. So, kind of going back, though, to SMT5, I was curious for each of you, was there one big thing at all that, like, has been, you just wish you could talk about it? Because, like, obviously, we can't, unless, like, we're being, like, an asshole, we can't really, like, just tweet about it and be like, man, how about that fucking Dazai's Virgil haircut, am I right, guys? Then you get all the likes or whatever. Like, for me, there have been so many little funny moments of just, like, God, I want to talk about this, but I've just not had an outlet that I can do it that's not just like a private one-on-one like conversation. Like, Mac, was there like anything for you while playing where you're like, I need to tweet about this? Like, what was like, if you had like full reign of spoilers, what would be like the first thing for SMT5 like you would just like blurt out of your mouth?
It would very much be how Miyazu is just completely squandered. That is, Miyazu and especially Kansu are just completely wasted. Even in the quote unquote even in the secret ending, I was so massively disappointed. I hated what they did with them.
I understand the disappointment for that, but like, so Lynn, did you do the Raw quest with Kansu and Miyazu?
No, I did. I spared Kansu, but then I think I got held up because I could never find Horus. Like they tell you.
Oh yeah, because it's a whole it's a whole like multi like part like path thing for it, so it's very easy to miss it. But basically, so the whole thing is basically if you miss that quest line, the I guess SparkNote's version of that story is the reason you haven't seen a lot of Kansu and the reason you haven't seen a lot of Miyazu is because they are each other's knowledge and partner and everything, and they could become a Nahabino, which is a really interesting twist. There's only one problem, is that they make it an optional side quest that's very easy to ignore, and no one interacts with their story, and all of it is text only. There's no cutscenes, none of it is voice, which is a really big shame because like that's I like the story that's there, and it is bare bones. But I think even the little act, like for me, like Mac, I think if they at least had voice acted all of those scenes, I think it would have hit a little bit harder than just like here. It just felt like a little bit of an extra bit of a budget for a side quest, whereas like I would have loved for that to have like almost been like its own kind of route you could explore, because one of the things you find out is Miyazu is dying from a terminal disease and no one knows about it. Maybe her brother, it's never really explicitly said, but then you get to this point of reasoning like, okay, that explains why he's so protective of his little sister, but then you also have to wonder, why is he not part of her storyline at all? Like, he doesn't, like, he's not there for her, this life or death thing, because basically Kansu has this big plan of, if he can become a Nahabina, or if he can ascend to Ra and kind of save Miyazu's life, that's more important to him than taking a seat at the throne, which is why he's not one of those mandatory boss fights. And it's a really interesting kind of dilemma in a story there, but again, it goes back to this thing of, it's super skippable, and what's there, it's like just bread, like it's so close to a really good cheeseburger, but like you just get a couple of fries, and I even remember when I interviewed Ryan about this, the voice of Kansu, I think I told him this like off the record for him, but like how frustrating is that going to be for him? Because like the little Kansu's voice actor is in there, it's really really good, but like I think it would have hit so much harder to have like that moment of just like, hey. Because like that's a really interesting side of like, hey, this is someone who we only know as like a god who is part of Bethel, but most of them are all kind of crazy or trying to take the throne for themselves. So it would have been a really interesting and unique angle, and it is still interesting to see it there. But it's just one of those things of it falls flat for all the wrong reasons. Because like it feels like there was nothing stopping them from making that like they clearly had the budget to keep it in the game, but like they just stopped at like actually fully incorporating into the story, which was so weird. Because it has nothing to do with an ending. None of the endings refer to anything with Miyazu or Kansu. Like, there's more of a reference to the super boss with Shiva than there is with either of them, which is super disappointing.
That was one of the main reasons why while I like the secret ending on its own, I hated the fact that all of the requirements to get it had like nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like the Amanozako quest, which actually is fully voiced, like does not like it just doesn't really relate to anything except it just doesn't relate to anything. It's just very much.
I will say in defense of the Amanozako quest, that's another one of a really cool idea it picks up on, but immediately drops it as soon as you find it. I liked that we find out why everyone's chasing her. I love that she's a Protofiend. and then we never talk about it because we only know two Protofiends. We know Aogami is, and we know she is, and they never get to interact. Like, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of talk? Because, like, we know so little about Protofiends. Like, really, it only ever comes up 3 times of meeting Aogami, that optional quest with Amanazaku, and a little tiny bit if you do the DLC quest for Mephisto, is you meet the guy who created them, but we never really kind of learn about, like, what was their use, how many of them were made. Like, are they all, like, the sentient? Are there, like, weird, like, defect ones? Like, there's such an interesting thing that could really be there with Protofiends, but really all it is it's just a person who's half demon.
Yeah. Well, and, like, the fact that I'm, like, an ultra completionist. Like, I'm the person who will clear out my entire quest log before I go finish the game. And that's how I was playing SMT5. I was like, I'm going to do all the side quests. I'm going to get all the meme on. And, like, the fact that the one quest I didn't do is the one that opened up this whole thing. Because it was seriously, I got to the point where you're supposed to go fight Horus, and it's like, okay, this place that it says he is at, I can't find it on the map anywhere. I don't know where he is. So, all right, I give up. I'm just going to go finish the game. And the fact that even playing as completionist as I do, usually, I somehow missed that whole storyline. I feel like that's just a lack of breadcrumbing, I suppose.
Well, it's interesting because, like, I can almost defend it in a little bit of it being hard to find because I like how it's spread out, and I loved when there were quests that would be like, hey, like the fact that Khonsu's kind of lair is all the way back in that bridge you could never get to in the first area. I thought that was so cool. Like, I would have liked to keep giving more reasons to kind of come back to those other areas because, like, in reality, like, we kind of talked about this before when you were on the podcast, but, like, when you say how big this game is, it probably sounds really small, but this game is so massive in its, like, area size. Like, they get a lot out of the square footage in that game.
I think I actually wanted to clear the record on that. I think you actually misunderstood what I was saying there. What I was actually referring to when I said the scope of the apocalypse, I meant that the apocalypse is only affecting Tokyo, which I couldn't say because it's a spoiler. But I felt like that kind of took some of the urgency out of it. That, like, okay, this isn't the whole world; it's just Tokyo. That's in danger.
Yeah, I remember that was one thing I was really confused on during my first playthrough. Was like, wait, so what is the status of the world outside of Tokyo?
Did that like make it lower stakes for you both? Like, was it like as soon as you heard, hey, Tokyo is the only place that got saved, everything else is fucked?
It was. For a lot of it, I was confused, and then once it started to get to like, God is dead, he's been dead for a long time, and that Abdiel and the rest are just kind of keeping up this farce in order to remain in power. Once it started to get to that, and then all these characters start like, oh, well, clearly this means we can all vie for the throne, we're all going to start going. That's when it started to, like, the tension started to pick up more for me, because it's like, okay, so now it's like, now we're getting to the point where the whole world is going to be affected, because like whether or not the outside world is like still around or whatever, it kind of didn't matter, because it's like, oh, well, if it is still around, it's gonna get wiped anyway.
Can I just say, like, imagine I would have loved if any part of, like, the other Bethel regions had commented on this, of, like, I would love it if everyone in Bethel was just really racist to everyone from Japan, because they're the only people who got to live. Like, what a bunch of assholes! God only saved this one city in Japan? Like, what a bunch of fucking assholes!
That wasn't my understanding of the story at all. Do they say that the rest of the world got wiped out?
So, yeah, God's miracle only protected, Tokyo. Not even Japan, just that one city you see in Tokyo. So that little map, that is the only thing that's there. And if you actually talk to all of the NPCs as the game progresses and stuff, they all become more literally like NPCs, blank faces, and the illusion as the gift starts to dissolve, the other people in the world will comment on how lifeless and how, like, faceless all the actual faceless NPCs are in the world, which I really love. Like, they do an interesting thing of kind of, like, you're living in a, like, lie. There are clearly people who exist, but, like, even you, the protagonist who you're playing as, like, you're not really a human. You're basically, like, you're like, God created a handful of Adam and Eves, and that's, like, the people who exist. But even then, like, if you're not a main character, you're literally just, like, background scenery. But they're sentient. They don't know their background scenery. And I think it has a lot of interesting little setups for the story, which is part of the reasons of, like, there's not a lot of story there, I think, in terms of, like, detail. But I think compared to, like, other games, I really liked how they used it. But again, it does get into that thing of, I would have loved to have seen more of the outside world. Like, my dream, if I could have made it, was, like, instead of there being one super big area for Chapter 4, I guess not Chapter 4, the fourth area, where you're hunting down all three of the different gods, is take me to Egypt. Take me to the Netherlands. Take me to Europe. Take me to India. Like, show me what the other parts of the world are besides this one. Like, Dot is a really interesting Netherland, but, like, what else does it look like? Let's get, like, there's no reason, like, we can't really go there, because we're already teleporting to everywhere anyway. And you would imagine that that would give a lot of, like, interesting, not only, like, kind of extra story context, but also give us more kind of things to sink our teeth into in terms of environments. Because, like, it's a really interesting looking desert, and I think it is visually varied through the whole game, but you are just in that same desert for, like, all 50 hours.
Okay, so that's why it felt lower stakes to me, because my interpretation of the story is that the rest of the world was fine. And then Tokyo got wiped out, and then they just painted over Tokyo with, New Tokyo or whatever. They kind of how many people thought that it was the way you're saying it is, and how many people thought it was the way that I thought it was.
They kind of get into it a little bit. If you talk to all of the NPCs in the fairy village and a couple of demons that sneak into the real world, well, I guess the fake world, I will say world. I'm a sucker for when games do that, of, like, the apocalypse is the real world. Like, because when you first start the game and it's like, are we 18 years in the future? I would have been like, oh my god, please don't make it about time travel. I would have hated that so much. But, like, I liked that we were living in, like, the fake world. I thought that was a cool touch. But if you're talking to some of the demons, they talk about humans in a really interesting way, because 18 years ago, all of humanity died. So when all of humanity died, there are tons of demons who have never experienced or run into a demon at all, which is why the fairy village was so interesting, because it's this group of demons who, they basically just look at humans like this weird, extinct creature they're just trying to protect.
Huh, okay. Well, that makes me want to replay it again now, because that completely changes my entire understanding of the story.
I honestly, I think you can just go back to when this game had its first, like, proper, like, we first started to really learn about about the story and what was going on back at E3, and how a lot of people thought it was going to be it was so unclear what exactly was going on that a lot of people thought it was going to be a Persona 3 situation where, oh, the world is fine, you just go to an alternate dimension that had an apocalypse, and it's only that alternate dimension that's affected. And I'm glad I was right in the sense that I had that theory based off of what Tao said, that it was like, oh, it might be like a Matrix scenario, and that's the most proper comparison. That's actually what it ended up kind of being. But I think the fact that it was so confusing in the beginning, it just, like, it was never, like, not super well communicated, I guess, or clear on what the game.
Yeah, the game definitely expects you to read into it a lot. But I'm also, like, someone who, I forgive a lot of stories that you could honestly throw a lot of, like, structural complaints to. Like, did either of you two see Tenet?
Nope.
Haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh my god. Okay, if you have HBO Max, Christopher Nolan will hate me for saying this. It is on there, and it's really, really great. I saw that fucking movie, and, like, here's, like, a better example of someone. I'm sure both of you saw. Both of you have at least seen Inception, right?
Yes.
Oh my god, have you not seen Inception?
No, I've seen Inception.
Okay, so it's like, you remember how, like, that was the thing of, like, if it was the year 2010 and you typed in, what does this mean, Google would just assume the ending of Inception, where it's like, Inception, specifically doesn't tell you some aspects. Tenet cranks that up to 10, and I really like it. Oh, that'd be funny if that's what it's called, but that's not why it's called Tenet. That would be really, really dumb.
Oh, wow.
It's just 10 Inceptions. So, Tenet's whole thing is literally is almost kind of doing like a Mementos level of, and I mean like the other Christopher Nolan movie, not the fucking shitty Persona area. It's doing this whole Mementos thing of, you are really in the dark unless you kind of either really pay attention this whole time and then it's all going to click at the end, or you give it a couple of like viewings. And I think SMT5 can very easily be that. And I can levy that as a fault, but that was one of those weird things for me, is because I just ate this big meaty game for so long, piecing it all together just felt like it felt like completing a puzzle with like no one else helping me, no one rushing me, and like when I finally like got all of those endings, it was nice how they all worked together. Because I think actually one of the worst ways to experience this game, outside of skipping side quests or skipping optional dialogue, is if you just get one ending and you tell me this game sucks, I would believe you, because the other endings definitely are very complimentary in my opinion. Like if you just got neutral and that was the ending, you'd be like, yeah, dude, that game sucked.
Yes, here's another big question I have, and I don't know if this is like something that actually gets answered if you do the secret ending or whatever, but I tried to talk about this in my review without giving any spoilers. But like when you get to Lucifer, and he's like, "This is where the cycle will repeat over and over because of something that I just made up called the mandala system that we've never talked about until now," and I was like, "Okay, do I have to go fight Shiva because mandala is like South Asian and maybe he's going to tell me what that means?" And then I beat him and he doesn't have anything to say about it. Like, if you do the secret ending, does it ever explain what he meant by like, oh, by defeating me you will have the knowledge to stop the mandala from turning or whatever?
Well, yeah, I want you to go, because the answer's, it's kind of yes and it's kind of no. Mac, what was your take on that when you heard that?
So I was going to say that not really, no, because it goes about as in-depth as in the other endings that Lucifer pops up in. But the way I interpret it is that the mandala system is essentially this game's equivalent of, in a way, it's kind of similar to the Great Will, which is actually introduced in Nocturne. And the Great Will is essentially the will of reality itself, which is this desire of like constant destruction and rebirth. And in the True Demon ending in Nocturne, spoiler alert, a lot of people know this ending, it's the most famous ending. Essentially, Lucifer recruits Demi-Fiend to go and try and put a stop to the Great Will, and stop this cycle. So it's kind of like it's meant to be like a parallel to the True Demon ending in a sense, but it's not as like, oh, we're gonna make this all badass, and you're gonna have like a legion of like you're gonna have control of Lucifer's legions of demons, and yeah, it's essentially kind of like that, but it doesn't go.
See, I wish they had done that.
Yeah, it doesn't go much deeper
awesome.
into it than
yeah.
that. Oh, the True Demon ending's badass.
I will say this about Nocturne, because actually I don't like True Demon ending, but not for the reason most tryhards don't. I only don't like it because it ends like God of War 2, where it's like, holy shit, we're gonna start this giant god war, but that never happens. That never comes.
It makes you think that it's going to lead into something, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if Dune 2 never got announced, and it's like, bro, Dune 1. Like, if Dune never got a sequel, we could just then immediately say Dune 1 sucks. Like, its ending means nothing, and they never follow up on it.
Yeah.
It's like, this fucking pregnant lady and fucking Timothy Chalamet just got in the desert, and that's the ending? Like, what the hell is this?
And then they lived happily ever after. Yeah, I think
they lived together in the desert.
So the thing I want to,
another one that's like that, yeah.
The thing I want to add on to that, because the true ending, God damn, you guys got me fucking saying it. The neutral plus special ultra ending is.
I've been calling it the secret ending.
It is notable because
the true neutral ending, so that's just what I've been calling it. Yeah.
It is interesting in one regard, because it does comment on something, because all of the endings, all four of them, do comment on this effect by Lucifer, as the cycle will repeat itself. But Lucifer does note something that's very important, but not really digested on a lot, is that this was only a recent discovery because of what Lucifer did when they killed God. And one of the things I really thought was interesting about that was when you choose to not only destroy the throne, when you specifically choose to destroy the throne and all of and destroy demons in the basically demons can never live with humans. Humans will just have their own little normie world. And what's so interesting about that is the game ends pondering the question of you've eradicated demons from all of existence, and this has never been done before. But what's to say that that's actually going to stop them from ever coming back? Because you think about how there are so many different ways of how demons have been brought into the world, whether it be summoning programs or whether... Because like all they've done is just basically create a bubble. That's just, we have recreated our world again. It doesn't have to mean that it's like a brand new world. It's just like, we've made a bubble for ourselves, and there's no demons in this whole world. And the game ends with a question of, like, you've pressed the reset button, but there's nothing stopping demons from coming back, meaning everything you did was for naught. Obviously, you now get to live peacefully, and there's not, like, a ticking timer in terms of the world. But another one of the interesting things that I'd be curious about for you, Max, since you got it, is I view the extended neutral ending as there are now two protagonists. There is you, the human, and then there is you, the throne keeper, who's just benevolently, like, ruling in the shadows. Like, no one knows you're there. Because, I love this shot, and I wish I could use it for the thumbnail, but it would be immediate mega spoilers. There's that opening shot...
biggest spoiler.
Because what happens is, Lynn, is in the true ending, it literally is just the opening of the game showing you walking through the train station before everyone meets going to school. And there's the quick moment where it's you closing the book and you walk past yourself, but you don't know that, like, you are, like, basically there's you from the end of the game watching you from the beginning of the game. And, like, kind of going back to it's just a endless cycle that can never really break. It almost, like, for me, gave that thing of, like, hey, there's the possibility that this doesn't become SMT5 again. But honestly, the thing that ticked into the back of my brain was, and Mac, you could probably lean to this because you just played it recently, was I could so see them making a Apocalypse version. So not a 1.5 version of SMT5, but kind of like a alternate future what if with the entire cast, but reused in different purposes with maybe even new characters and stuff. Because, like, it's just, like, it's a repeating cycle, but you are God now, or whatever the heck God means, in this kind of weird repeating, like, cycle, except now there's just no demons in this world, but you could still see it going wrong at a moment's notice.
Yes, so that's actually one thing I have been thinking about while I've been playing the game, and then now that I'm finished with it, the only thing I haven't done is the Demi-Fiend. But I've been thinking, like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to... Obviously, Atlas is going to do something. They're not just going to let this game sit. Atlas's whole MO nowadays is we have the game, and then we do an enhanced re-release a year, 2 years down the line.
I wouldn't say that's the case anymore. Like, that used to be them, but, like, they take so long to make stuff now. Like, if Royal took 3 years for a kind of 1.2.5, like, I would say if they re-released this with extra content, I feel like for them they would just kind of look at it like 4 and just go, wouldn't it just be cheaper just to reuse a bunch of assets and come up with a new story?
I disagree. I think it would, if anything, I think that would actually be about the same cost.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, I think I've been thinking, like, are they going to do the enhanced re-release? I'm just confident that they're not just going to let this game sit.
No, yeah, it'll get ported for sure. It'll get ported for sure.
They're going to do something with it, whether it's an enhanced re-release or an Apocalypse style thing or whatever. And there's that there, and I've been thinking about that, and I could really see it kind of going any way because I think it could benefit from either. I think having a full-blown Apocalypse-style sequel would be cool because I want to see them do more in this style. But then I would also really appreciate like an enhanced re-release because hopefully they could fix up the story a bit more and fill in a lot of the areas that feel rushed.
So
or
I was
Misty?
wondering to like run this by you guys because I was thinking about this recently in terms of if they did touch the game again without making a whole new game, like trying to think of a realistic and cheap-ish way to do the game. How do you guys think it would be received if they made two pieces of DLC? One where you play through the entirety of the story from Dazai's point of view and from Atsuda's point of view.
That would
could
be
interesting. Yeah.
Because
that could be
they're
interesting.
both demon summoners. God knows Atsuda could use with a little bit more story, and it would give
Oh, God.
more clarity to some of those demons and stuff. For because it's definitely not even for all the characters, even in kind of situations like that of like showing more of like what really went on behind the scenes. Like the game does a good job of kind of explaining the motivations, I think, between law, neutral, and chaos. Oh, and sorry, and a third option, which would of course be the most popular one, is then playing with Nua and oh my god, why am I forgetting his name? What's his last name?
Katana
Yakumo.
Cop. Yeah.
Yakumo and Nua could then be like the third like neutral route DLC. Because like honestly, if you want to talk about characters that get robbed, but they do have a really cool backstory set up, is Yakumo has a really interesting story, not only with like the like demons killing his family thing, but on top of the things that they never get into of like he just straight up had like his son killed and no one ever talks to him about it. You just have to like find this one random police officer to find out that his son was killed at a really young age.
Right. Yeah. And that was like such a. And this is another one of my larger criticisms is. It sounds like this is the same thing with the Miyazu subplot you were talking about. It's very tell, don't show.
Yes.
Like, we don't ever see his past with, like, his family getting killed by the demons and, like, how that shaped him as a person. We're just told about it, which is not, they'll tell you in film school or game design school or any kind of like arts
he needs
program.
a film grain anime backstory flashback. That's what he needs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Honest,
for sure.
one thing I was thinking about is if they were to do an enhanced re-release, like they could expand upon. It would probably like people would probably have issues with pacing, but it's the immediately think off the top of my head. Expand upon those moments in between the levels where you go back to Tokyo. And instead of having it be like, oh, you spend 10 minutes in Tokyo, you could have like a bit more time where like you kind of see like flashbacks.
Show me their fucking
like,
dormitory. I want to know what these weirdos' rooms look like.
Why do they
And,
keep
like-
hanging out on the rooftop?
Yeah, well, and like you were talking about when on the last episode I was on that you really like the flavor text of like the little peg guys. Like there's the guy that is talking about his company and his like moving offices and stuff, but it's like you don't even see his face. Like he doesn't even have a portrait. Like I want to at least see, I want to see that he's a person and see that he has like facial expressions, and I think that would have developed a much stronger connection to Tokyo and made me feel more emotionally invested in saving it.
I'm trying to think. This is a really dumb aside, but someone I forgot brought this up recently, and since I heard it, I can't stop thinking about it. This game has a bajillion bosses to fight, so it's kind of hard to say that. Boy, I wish there were more. But like, there is one that I'm like, boy, this was a really big. They whiffed on this one, even if they didn't think about it. It is kind of a bummer that after you collect all 200 Mimon, you don't fight Gustav. Because that would have been just the best, like, for no reason, you'd be like, hey, thanks for collecting all my buddies, here's your reward. Also, we're now going to form a Voltron Gustav where you have to destroy me.
That would have
Like,
been
that-
great. Yeah.
Like I will say, yeah, that was kind of disappointing that you ultimately don't. I mean, you do get something for getting all 200, but I feel like there should have been an additional thing of like, hey, you got all of them to make it feel a bit more special.
Yeah, it's no Breath of the Wild like poop joke thing. Like it's definitely I'm asking for more when you don't really need it, but it is one of those things of like to a lesser extent, like he like it because like thinking about it like this of if you don't play the Demi-Fiend DLC, you are very much able to say, where the fuck was Sophia and why is she in the story? Like, blue sexy lady, is as much of a big mommy milkers as she is, has no relevance on the story. And ironically, she has more spoken dialogue in that paid DLC than the entire actual game.
Yes. That's another thing I found kind of funny is the only DLC I've done is the Demi-Fiend DLC, but if I remember correctly, that whole DLC is fully voiced.
Yeah, the entire thing is all the fiends are voiced. Aogami even gets a handful of new lines and stuff, and obviously, Super Pixie and everything brought back for it. Like that is such a weird, interesting case for me of like they put so much work into that, and the game already on its own is such a big meaty game. I was like, this is like the first time Atlus has made, I think, like fairly priced DLC for everything that's given. Because obviously you're going to get those people who are like, well, it's done at launch, it should have been in the base game, but it's like, that's just not the world we live in. Like, we're living in a world of Microsoft Flight Simulators where I have to buy a $60 747. Like, it's not going to happen. Not enough people are going to stop buying these DLCs that they're just going to be like, guys, put them back in, they're not buying them.
And the thing is, if it wasn't paid DLC, they probably couldn't afford to have it all be fully voiced. Like, I'm sure the fact that they were able to record more voice acting was at least partly because they knew they were going to get like some return on investment from that, so they can justify bringing the actors back into the studio.
Oh, I will say this, that is very funny. Len, you won't be able to actually rectify this. Even though both of these games released in the same year, they do all of the Nocturne bosses do not share the same voice actors in 5. They were done at the same recording company, but they still had different voice actors for no reason at all, and it is absolutely hilarious and mind-boggling.
Yeah, that is kind of strange.
That's one thing I gotta say I really like about Lucifer, is that in both Nocturne and in this, he's voiced by Paul. Does a fantastic job.
I'm a huge dumb Metal Gear fanboy, so as soon as I heard Paul was Lucifer in the ending of Nocturne, I freaked out. Because I think he does a really great job of like having that really deep kind of booming voice, but not come off as a immediately malignant or like evil and stuff. But then also for the dumb, selfish reason of now being like, oh, I have a reason to get him on the podcast. I don't know when, but I have an excuse.
Okay. Honestly, whenever I hear Paul Eiding, a lot of people, when they hear Paul Eiding, they think Colonel Campbell. For me, I hear Uncle Max from Ben 10 because that's the first time I heard him. That's the first time I heard him, and I didn't even really watch Ben 10 as a kid, but I
watched a lot of Ben 10.
That's the first time I heard him, and that's just immediately what I think, because his voice is really unique.
Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, Lynn, you will find out while you play Nocturne in the year 2030 or something. Unfortunately, the voice acting in the characters are not as equally good in 3 as they are in 5. At least IMO. Even though they were done by the same production company, it is so weird to me. Of like, I loved the at least the direction in the voice. Like, there were no characters in 5 where I was like, you're a little off. Whereas, like, there are so many characters in 3 that I'm like, I could have recast at least half of you.
Yeah, I think that's how long-running RPG series tend to go anyway.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, regarding Lucifer's role, going back 10,000 years to when you asked if there was anything we really wanted to talk about that we couldn't, because it was a spoiler, I did really like, even not having played the other games, but knowing that it's usually, there's a God ending and a Satan ending and some kind of neutral ending. I really liked the twist that God is already dead. Like, he doesn't really, his followers factor into it, but not, he dead, fam. Like, it's out of the picture.
If God showed up as a final boss, like if after you killed Lucifer, I was worried about this in the moment, but I was like, if God fucking shows up in this game, I will be so mad. Because, like, there's no way they could have made that cool. Like, imagine just being told for 50 hours, he's dead. And then fucking Kirk Cameron shows up with his Bible dick out, and he's like, God's not dead, 3 bitches, come on and punch him! And he's like, God damn it, Kirk Cameron, get out of here!
I'd have to show this game to my aunt because she loves that movie.
Yeah, well, and I love that the chaos ending was sort of the polytheism ending. Yeah, I think a lot of people know I'm a pagan in real life, so that was like totally my shit. It's like, oh yeah,
I appreciate that ending so much. Of like, I said this on. I said this on my friend's podcast, but I if there were any endings I would have loved them to elaborate on a little more, it was the chaos ending of all the gods are recreated to rule, and it was just because, like, you know that, like, what's going to happen is, like, Nahabino just turns into Bully Maguire from Spider-Man 3, and they're all just like, Nahabino, why did you recreate all of the gods? Like, half of them want to kill us or have sex with us. And he just looks down from his throne and says, I missed the part where that's my problem. And then he just leaves.
That's actually one thing I really like with SMT5. So one thing I've had a couple of comments on my review of the game with this, where I said in my review that towards the end of the game, things started to really ramp up and got really interesting, and a lot of some people will comment saying, like, "Did we play the same game? What are you talking about? This game, like, struggles to have an identity or something." And what I was talking specifically about was a lot of, like, the philosophical and thematic things, where I felt like it was putting a very interesting twist on the standard law, chaos, neutral. Outside of law, considered like typical law, like keep things the way they are, but more specifically, like, you know, keep it all under God's will. But chaos wasn't the typical, you know, oh, the survival of the fittest, the weak deserve to die, and the strong shall rule. It was more, it was actually like we're trying to help people. We have this idea that we think can work, but there's a very solid chance that it could just go completely bottoms up and everything gets ruined, because a bunch of gods that are all, like, equally powerful start, like, going at it and trying to, like, kill each other. And then neutral isn't so much like everything go back to normal, you know, they're gonna ignore that this happened. It's more we are willing to do awful things and to be kind of assholes in an attempt to just, like, completely remove this situation. Like, I couldn't tell the first time I got to the lock, I couldn't tell whether or not Yakumo or, like, Koshimizu was going to be the law or chaos. I couldn't tell which was which.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting. They really beat you down for doing the neutral ending if you don't get all the, like, the secret version. Because at the end it's like, well, now there's demons everywhere, and they're just going to be running around killing people because you didn't want to take the throne. Great job, asshole. Like, It's like, well, that's not what I wanted. I just didn't think there should be a ruler.
Shout out to at least them actually showing us destroying the throne. Like, it's not like we've metaphorically destroyed. No,
yeah.
we are here, and this thing is not leaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing, the chaos ending was actually just like a more, not realistic, but a more like traditional SMT take on the divine powers in Apocalypse, because that's exactly what they wanted. That's what they want. The divine powers, they were trying to be like, we're going to recreate the world so that a bunch of gods are all in control, and it's essentially like polytheism. In the Japanese, weren't they called the polytheistic alliance?
I got a question for both of you. What was your first ending you got, and did you plan on did you know what you were getting at from the get-go? Because for me, all I knew was I needed to see what the fuck Nahabino Prime Minister Koshimizu looked like. I was like, I don't care what happens, I'm ride or die with this guy. And then, of course, the game cucks me and kills him in an instant.
Right.
And I found out I have chaos, and I was like, damn, well, at least I get to see this weird bull with big tits and a penis, but I guess I'll get him next time. But, like, I like the ending I got for the first. It has a penis and boobs and arms, and got a lot of appendages.
I did not notice the penis.
Listen, it's the best. It's the Hannah Montana demon at the end of the day. It is the best of both worlds.
Hell yeah.
So for me, I got Chaos first time, and I was I liked the ending that I got in terms of its like story stuff for it. But it was one of those things of literally, like you said, when it came to picking those 3 reasons, I was like, I have no idea. Like, you could tell me all of these are law or all of these are chaos, and I would have believed you. Like, Lynn, what did you get for your first playthrough?
Oh, I definitely got the Amatsukami ending. I was totally like, yeah, I'm 100% on board with this. We're gonna bring back all the old gods. Let the Aesir reign in Scandinavia. Let the Amatsukami reign in Japan. That's like, you know, that's like a dream for me. Yeah, I was totally going for that ending. I thought about destroying the throne because I do kind of philosophically agree with the idea that, well, there's probably shouldn't be a supernatural being ruling over everything. Like, maybe we should just take that possibility out of the equation. The one I will never do is the cop ending. I will never do the law ending. I'm philosophically opposed to it.
I will say this: the law ending is a million times funnier when you just and I told Dazai's voice actor this exact same thing of like it's a million times funnier if you just assume that he's just doing it because he's just got the world's biggest and most dangerous Oedipus complex, and he's just like, I've just got mommy problems and I've got to follow this giant gold lady around, like even with her head split open and turning purple, I'm still gonna bring God back.
Yeah.
One thing that I actually completely forgot about, but ties in with what I said about how it's kind of like a more fresh takes on the law chaos neutral. Earlier I said that law was very much kind of your standard law ending where it's like, oh God, you know, God rules, we're gonna keep everything the same, but it's gonna be like you're gonna listen to God and you're gonna do what He wants. What was refreshing about it was specifically Dazai and how he's obviously the law hero, but his story is way different than the traditional law hero story, where the law hero story is usually someone who sides with the powerful because they believe it to be right, and like they're willing to like go that far to, you know, do what they truly believe in. Whereas with Chaos Hero, it's typically, I am a weak person, I want more power. But Dazai is, I am a weak person, I don't know who to turn to, I'm going to turn to God because this person is, whether or not Abdiel is like really aware that she's doing this or not, she's essentially indoctrinating him and being like, oh, you can get more power if you believe in God, which is actually way more realistic. And like, that's actually how religions work.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly refreshing. I think in terms of characters, Dazai is the best in the game.
I agree.
Not to say that he's like this amazing character, but he's definitely the best and most.
Let's be real. When we all were introduced to him in the tunnel, none of us were like, this guy's going places. Yeah. He would have been the easiest person to make a one-note fucking character, and they definitely played with their expectations with him the most.
I did not think he was gonna be one of the main, like, I didn't think he was gonna be the law or chaos hero. I didn't think he was gonna be that. I thought he was gonna be like, oh, he's gonna be like the weird dude off in the corner.
My only complaint, I will never forgive him. Why the fuck does just one of his pant legs rolled up? Roll both of them up or one of them down? I absolutely, I don't care what character arc happens to him. I need someone to give this man shorts or keep both of those pant legs down, because he looks so cool. But if I cosplayed him, I would be like, I've got to change this. Like, it weirdly upset me. Like, it was like what I imagine, like, if you're a mother watching your son go to school for the first day, and on the back of his shirt, he's just got like I like big tits. And like, oh no, come on, buddy, not on the first day. You're making an impression of yourself here. Come on.
Related to that example, when I was in college, in my Japanese class, someone came to class wearing the One Punch Man Oppai hoodie. Oh
no!
And our sensei, because it was a Japanese class, who she actually is like, she was actually Japanese and all that. She doesn't watch anime, and she's only like faintly like aware of like what's really popular because
I thought you were gonna say she's only faintly Japanese. You're not full Japanese unless you watch anime too.
But she saw the hoodie and she got really she saw the hoodie and got really confused and like embarrassed, and it was really funny.
Oh no, yeah.
I have two very painful memories you've just brought back up into my head, Mac. One, when I took Japanese for 2 years in high school, there were two Japanese teachers. The foreign exchange teacher, very nice, very patient lady from Japan, and then the recently divorced, hates all men, stereotypical cranky white lady teacher.
Oh no!
And I got her, and let me tell you, you could just she literally was that stereotypical thing of I just got divorced and all men are my ex-husband, and that's how. And she taught a class where there were two men, and so you could immediately tell when she was not talking to one of the other girls in the class. So, who was everyone's favorite character here?
I think Dazai definitely has the most interesting arc. I think he has the most powerful emotional moments, probably. I did really like the Prime Minister / Tsukiyomi. He was really cool. They're probably. I guess Abiel's interesting. I don't really like her as a person or as a demon. But she kind of had an interesting arc and role in the story, and Nua as well, especially if you do the neutral ending and you kind of learn a little bit more about what her whole thing is, and that like she genuinely cares for mortals and this one specific mortal. I think those are the four that are kind of my
what would be the
characters.
opposite of a redemption arc?
Like a fall from grace arc.
I definitely agree with you. Like Abdiel, I thought was interesting in aspects, but definitely not like a standout character. But yeah, as soon as she had her fall from grace, I was like, I definitely want to know what happens to you, let's be real. I don't know anyone who watched her demonic transformation of literally splitting her head open and another head comes out. Like, that was just so metal to me, of like, that's fucking cool.
Well, and symbolically, that is very much my experience with organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying for everybody, but people who are very sanctimonious and, want to say, oh, it's God's will, sometimes turn out to be the biggest monsters of all, so...
Mm-hmm. I would say out of all the well, first off, the only people in the story I would say feel like actual characters are Dazai, Nua, Koshimizu, and Yakumo, kind of, and then Nua. Everyone else just does not feel like a real character to me. But I would say out of them, Dazai would be my favorite just because, like I said earlier, I feel like he's the most fully realized character. He's the one that has like the most of an arc. Plus, Stuart Allen does a really good job voicing him.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say he's probably my favorite character just from the group of characters I would actually say are characters.
So... I'm sorry, both of you are going to be put in bad and also correct jail right now. So, I am amazed none of you said Aogami. I love Aogami, and I think Aogami does a great job. But I will say you are correct for not including him, because much like the game, you also forgot that he existed at the end. Like, I love Aogami. It literally feels like the game forgets he exists for the last level, and it makes no sense.
It does. I will say in the secret ending they definitely remember him.
They remember him, but only for saying goodbye. Like literally, again, not to repeat myself, I cannot believe that there was not a moment with Aogami and Koshimizu / Tsukiyomi. Like they should have had a fucking Metal Gear Solid 4 Liquid Snake and Solid Snake boss fight, punching each other and yelling, "Brother!"
That was the reveal that I think was the most impactful for me too. Obviously, being a mythology nerd, is when you actually figure out who those two and then eventually third, which I don't know if everybody picked up on this if you aren't like a Japanese mythology nerd. But when you find out that the Prime Minister is Tsukuyomi, I was like, oh. And then when you find out that the Protofiend is Susanoo, I was like, fuck yeah, that's cool. And then you're wondering, okay, so we've got 2 out of 3. Where's Amaterasu? And then Tao does her whole transformation. I'm like, I see what you did there. Nicely done. Nicely done.
I will say, I literally, until the ending of the second area, where you kill Lamu, I was like, you couldn't pay me money to not only care or be interested in Tao. And as soon as she died, I was like, I know they're going to do something with that. I know they're going to do something, and I really hope it pays off. And yeah, like, for me, when, like, we had the realization of, like, because they did a very, like, kind of Mie's job of, like, explaining how she's a goddess or, like, a saint to them. It was very much kind of, like, it's more of a physical thing as opposed to, like, a metaphorical. And I really thought, like, that was such an interesting kind of tie to her character, on top of the fact that it is still separate. Like, Tao and, like, Amaterasu as a goddess, like, they're still 2 separate people. They're just in the same body, which I thought was very interesting. Kind of then going back to the Nahabino thing of, I liked how just because you are a Nahabino doesn't mean the 2 people that made you happen cease to exist.
Right.
But no, the thing I also wanted to ask, universally, how did everyone feel about Tao joining your party? Because I pumped so much XP into her that when I lost her at the end, I was like,
yeah,
fuck.
Grimoire's gone.
I don't remember if. Well, I don't know if you saw it, but I actually kind of went on a little bit of a rant about how you literally cannot do anything. You cannot get her back. If you tried anything, you just cannot get her back.
It's so just weird that, like, not even New Game Plus you can bring her back. It's very weird how it's tied to only that one section of the story.
She ends up being arguably the worst. I mean, you can make her better, but it won't matter because in the long term, you're going to lose her.
Right. Yeah. It was definitely odd, I think.
That feels like something that, again, they would fix in an enhanced re-release. SMT5, Shekinah, whatever they're going to call it.
Yeah. I would also love to see the other 2 get, like, their Nahubino forms. Like, I want to see Atsuda and Dazai, like, what they would look like, you know.
Well, see, I took that. I took those 2 endings as that is what their Nahabino form would be, with the exception of, I guess you could say, obviously, Abdiel and Dazai would probably not look as demonic, but I'm 100% that, yeah, with Atsuda and Koshimizu, they would still look like true form Tsukuyomi mustache.
That's so one thing I will say about the neutral ending, even though it does essentially blue ball you and cut you off before the actual proper final boss. I think in that specific, having the final boss be Tsukuyomi, I thought like it fits like the Dante Virgil type thing of like they are similar to you but different. And it made the moment feel like really like tense and badass in the sense of like, oh shit, it's going down. One thing I do wish, actually, when it came to the other endings, whether you do Law or Chaos, the order is no matter what, the second person you fight, the one you fight at the throne, is always Yakumo. And I kind of wish that they just rotated them so that each one had a different, like they had a different order of fighting.
I'll at least say this. At least they didn't, and this is very loose Nocturne spoiler, so don't worry if anyone hasn't played Nocturne. I am so glad they at least didn't do the fucking Nocturne thing, because Nocturne's thing is, hey, I don't care what ending you got, I'm going to make you fight every fucking boss for no reason.
Yes.
Like, the only one you can skip, there's one instance of a boss you can skip. Like, technically two if you're counting a really weird, boring ending. But, like, it's like, I don't care what ending you do. We designed this game to be fight this boss, fight that boss, then the final boss. And for the multiple endings and multiple playthroughs, it makes it so frustrating to go through for, like, no reason. Like, the tiny, minuscule amounts of, like, different dialogue I thought was so dumb. But I will say, though, because one of my biggest complaints with the endings is I hate how quickly whatever side you choose gets noped out on. And I thought it would have been a really interesting fix if instead, let's say, so for when I picked the Chaos route and I side with Koshimizu, instead of when Dazai and them become a Nahabino, and they just instantly die for no reason because apparently they have fucking 1 HP left. Their Super Saiyan Blast just literally kills them for no reason, and vice versa for Dazai. But, like, instead of that being the case, like, what should have happened was then when you enter that final area after combining with them, they should have become a Nahabino, and then they joined your party. Like, it would have been way more impactful if then you could then work with them in your party. You can kill them off after that fight. I totally get it in that case. But it's one of those things of, like, they literally had the most unsatisfying on-screen death I've ever seen in media. It's like could you have died off camera and I could pretend that you went out a little bit better?
That honestly, that was one thing I was talking with a friend of mine who just finished the game a little bit ago and is now going back through on the other routes. I actually really like how this game handles all of the death scenes. All of them feel like there's actual proper weight to it, and while it's not necessarily like, no, it's not. It never really feels like, no, my favorite character is dead or anything like that. But it's more like, oh, shit. Like there's like they feel heavy. Sahori's death feels like appropriately like, damn, like just kind of sad. And like just how it's handled, where it's like very muted and understated. Once you beat like Dazai or Yakumo or Koshimizu, Atsuta, whatever, once you beat them and the cutscene following with their death, where they're just kind of lying there and then they slowly just dissipate, I really like that. It just felt heavy to me. But when it came to the people dying prior to that fight, whoever you sided with, when it came to them dying, it definitely was kind of like, man, I there was a part of me that did wish that there was like a little bit more. I feel like the only death I was really okay with that time was Yakumo and Nua. There was something about that felt a bit more appropriate, and maybe that's just because like Nua was still alive or something.
I get that. I will say, I don't know why you listing off the characters reminded me of this. We all just need to collectively apologize to Hayataro for actually being the most forgotten character in the story.
Yeah, yes.
Like, literally, he's just given to you, and it's like, the game doesn't even know what to do with him, so he's like, hey, he can join your party now. And you're like, he's literally 50 levels below everyone. What is your end game here?
I got him
actually useless.
I got him up to. I actually maxed him out on New Game Plus, but it took until like
he's a great demon, and he shows up enough times to be interesting. But it's like literally, what were they thinking with it? Of just like, because I originally thought, I don't know about both of you, I thought, oh, he's going to be Atsuta's kind of right hand demon. Nope.
Yeah.
Here's a quick question, kind of jumping off of Hayataro. In one of his frankly few appearances is during Chota, the third major area, when the giant battle's happening up in the sky. He shows up there for like, you just run past him. In that time, part of the reason why he is there is because Koshimitsu was like, I want Dazai and main character, I want you guys to go to Chota and go and do this thing. Atsuta, I have something specific for you to do. What was Atsuta doing?
He was basically doing. I'm not sure how that process, because they don't actually. Like, I know what they were doing, but I kind of wish they would kind of explain why this is a time consuming process. So, to confirm that a human's knowledge is fitting of a god, it does take some amount of work and processing. You can't just, like, oh, I know who it is. They kind of get into that with Zeus, when you find out that Zeus's knowledge had been murdered by one of the demons. But it's one of those things of, like, clearly this is something that takes time unless they're right in front of you, and even in that case, you don't know for sure unless you really know. A good example would be how Aogami basically went into hibernation mode looking for his knowledge, and the only reason you really find it is just because you were at the right place at the right time. So, like, they could probably, not even probably, they should have explained it a little bit better of, like, maybe we were doing compatibility tests, maybe they were talking about more of their options. Like, one of, like, my things of, like, I would have loved if you picked a route earlier on, it kind of diverged in the story more, because really, choice never matters in this game. Until you finish, like, the Temple of Eternity or whatever, and you make, like, one of those three choices, your choices never affect your ending at all. Nothing ever locks you out, nothing ever progresses you in one way or the other, outside of a couple of, like, route-specific demons or miracles. So the thing about that, like, while that's kind of disappointing, it would have given a lot of time to flesh things out of, like, I would have loved it if the only way you could get to the fourth area wasn't just Tao teleports you. I would have loved, because remember after that moment, there's like, everyone's like, Koshimizu's like, I'm going to find out how to get us to this area so we can get to the temple. It would have been nice if instead we could be like, hey, I'm going to ignore this creepy ghost girl who's telling me to go up to the roof. I'm going to go follow Koshimizu. Or I'm going to go with Miyazu, and that's how you maybe find out about the Kansu thing. Or like other aspects like that. Or I'm going to stay with Dazai and not just leave him in the really cool epic Lily Pond area and with Abdiel, and then you stick with like them of like making that decision be picked earlier to expand upon that story in that fourth area, as opposed to everyone gets there the same way. Everyone has to fight the same demons the same way, and only at the 11th hour do we finally let your kind of diverging happen. And even when you diverge, like I don't hold this against the game because I think the story that's there I still like, but there's never been an Atlas game where choices mattered less. Your choices literally never matter at all unless you want this ending, or that ending.
I think that was definitely one thing I was thinking about. Is like, yeah, your choices really don't matter. It's just the one choice, which is very similar to Apocalypse. But even in Apocalypse, it felt like the choices up to that point still mattered, because you would be punished if your choices did not align with what you ultimately picked. Whereas here, you're not punished, you just don't get rewarded.
See, I'm almost like desensitized to it, because like Atlas is just always kind of, for lack of a better word, really half-assed it with like picking things that like affect the overall narrative. Obviously there are things in character dynamics that can change, but even with something like Persona, there's never an option where, oh my god, did you pick this? Oh dude, I got such a different ending. Like, it's always basically like one of two or three endings, and it's because at the end of the day, if you make a game with branching narratives, that is extremely technically hard and extremely expensive, because guess what? You're basically making multiple games at that point.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, P5 has the characters whose links you maxed out, the non-party member characters will, like, show up at the end, which, those kind of things I think are a nice touch. Like, maybe if you did Atsuta's side quest line or something, then, like, his role in the ending is slightly expanded or slightly different. Like, something like that would have been really cool.
See, like, for me, I viewed the lack of choice mattering in this game being the most blatant as them just accepting it. Like, for me, that's why I didn't care about it. Like, it just seemed like they had just said, you know what, Spencer, you're right. Choices don't matter in this game. We're just going to tell you the story, and you can tell me what ending you want. And I kind of appreciated that, like, because it was like one of those things of like, I don't need to fucking replay your game 4 times to get all 4 endings. Like, let me just reload up a save, see the other endings, and save myself like 20 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is sort of a more specific criticism that I didn't get into as much with the review is that I feel like I could do a video essay about this, just showing examples. But I feel like the story the story's most important moments often do not present themselves with the weight that they deserve. Like when you find out that the prime minister is actually Tsukuyomi and like the protofiend is actually Susanoo, I
They
talked
just
about
say
that
it.
being one of the coolest things. It's a guy in a medium shot standing against a glass wall talking, and the music doesn't even change. There's not even like a da-da, like
You know what probably would have helped that? Like, I think
Yeah.
if we had more like Lucifer flashbacks, like we got before the Hydra fight, of just like
yeah.
instead of just telling us he's Tsukuyomi, bring us back to 18 years ago, where it shows him
Yes.
saving Tokyo. Like show him
Yes.
actually being Tokyo's defender. Like stuff like that would have definitely helped a lot. Because unless you're
what I was missing. That's
unless-
the part that I was missing.
Yeah,
is
unless-
stuff like that. Yeah.
unless you're like a big like history nerd or mythology nerd, like it's all just gonna fly over your head. Like, okay, you just told me
Oh, yeah.
gobbledygook words.
I would imagine even among JRPG fans, probably more than half of people don't know who's. To Google it, like unless they're familiar with the Japanese gods from like playing previous games in the series or something. So
Yeah, it that's kind of, I feel like that's ultimately the biggest problem with this game's story is it's very much tell don't show, and it's a lot of things that I could see just being fixed easily again in an enhanced re-release, where they can just, now that they have more time and more budget, and overall it wouldn't cost as much as like literally making the game from zero, they can go back in and add in more scenes, or they can redo scenes. They can hopefully go back in and fully voice all of the side quests that are actually required to get the secret ending. There's like a lot they could do that, frankly, for an enhanced re-release, wouldn't be that difficult or wouldn't be as time consuming as what like the first time around.
Much like with multiple choice endings, I'm going to have to be a realist here and say we all know that re-release is not going to happen. At least in terms of like they've never done the like. Because even look at Royal. Royal doesn't like go back and fix Persona 5's major flaws. If they did, they would have gotten rid of the stupid flashback mechanic. Like they leave the original story warts and all. Like I'd say extra voice acting, yeah, you could definitely get, but like they would never go back and kind of change it, because I think even just like from an artistic standpoint, that's kind of saying you're right. We did a bad job on the story. We should fix some things, especially from from an Eastern perspective. Like you would never get that, because that would just kind of be like them kowtowing.
Yeah, no. What they're gonna do is they're gonna go in and they're gonna add in a new ending with a new waifu that will either be okay or annoying, and that'll be it. That'll be it. That's all they'll really do. They might add some stuff back in. They might add a few like more minor things in like in the story, like how in Royal it's like, we added a few more scenes with Haru so she gets more screen time, but ultimately those scenes are like 2 extra scenes.
In this version of SMT5, if you squint in the train station, you can see the shadow of Lamu.
Whoa!
I was actually thinking that would be a really interesting if they were going to add another ending, like siding with Lamu and keeping. I keep blanking on her name.
Sahori.
Sahori alive.
Yo, can we just say I'm so glad that they actually
alternate
showed
path.
the Lamu Nahabino just being a disgusting white like semen coming out of his hole.
It's just a sperm.
I will say this. I want to know what both of you think about this, because I had this kind of thought about how to make Sahori's story, because I actually like that it kind of tones down the scale. It like gets a little bit less. It's a world-ending event, and kind of it feels almost more of like you would see as like a one-off episode in an anime of like bullied girl gets taken over by demon using her powers and blah blah blah. I think one of the things that would have made it tie into the story a lot better, because she is one of the rare side characters who has a name and is voice acted, but doesn't really have like a tie to the main cast outside of she was Tao's friend. Like, I think instead of making her Tao's friend, because like that relationship never felt like they were friends at all. Like my thing is this: instead of her being Tao's friend, what do you think it would have done, or like what do you two think if she was friends with the bullies. So she was always there as they were getting bullied. She wasn't bullying them, but she saw her get beat up and, like, bullied and, like, made fun of all the time. So that way, the reason we're going after her is because she's just got this immense amount of guilt because everyone thinks she's the perfect school idol and, like, the saint and the priestess, when in reality, she's just some shitty bystander who didn't stop bullying from happening, and now look at what's happened to her.
That, I think, would definitely work a lot better, where it's just kind of like it would give Tao more motivation than simply like, oh, she's my friend and my friend's in pain. It would be more like she feels responsible, and that would make it a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Literally, until Tao dies, she could be replaced with a loaf of white bread, and I would not have been able to tell the difference. She is so bland.
Yeah,
she just tells you they used to be friends, and you're just supposed to like, oh, okay, I accept that. But if in that first scene where we see Sahori getting bullied, if Tao was just kind of there, like the two girls as they're walking away, they walk up to Tao, and then Tao looks like concerned, but she just kind of like doesn't address it. I think that would have improved it so much more. That would have meant so much more and made her seem more like it would characterize her more.
So I wanna try and actually lean on a little, because believe it or not, as with all pieces of media, it's really easy to complain about the stuff you didn't like, because it's really because most of the time it'll always be the stuff I definitely do have way more, like, overall, I think when I'm looking at it, it's really easy to poke the holes through it, but like overall, I genuinely really did like the story. I was curious for you all, this doesn't have to be like a huge epic moment, but I was curious for both of you, was there one moment that really sticks out in your head for this game story-wise that either seemed like that it hit really well, was performed really well, or like what was like one moment in the story for you that was like, wow, you hit the nail on the head at Shin Megami Tensei V?
For me, I kind of touched on it earlier, but I really liked basically all of the death scenes in the game. I felt like they all were handled perfectly. I think Sahori's death specifically, where she's just kind of like, Lamu is dead, or, you know, not fully, but Lamu is like wounded. Tao is gone. Everything is awful, and now Sahori is just a murderer. And she's just kind of freaking out. And Nahobino just walks up and embraces her and hugs her, and then stabs her. I thought that was very like poetic, where it's not so much like it's not trying to like forgive her actions, but it's also like she is a victim and she, you know, could have easily been avoided, and it's just kind of tragic what's happening. I really liked that moment and just how it's handled.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I already kind of touched on mine with finding out the identities of like the main Amatsukami. Although I will say they didn't use the tools available to them to make those moments feel as impactful as they could. I also really liked where sort of the group makes the decision that like Bethel Japan is going to secede, and then that whole council meeting. I really liked that because it's like we're not gonna put up with your bullshit anymore. We're gonna do our own thing.
I'm so glad you gave that scene a shout out. Like, one of my favorite parts about that scene before the Abdiel fight is it forces you to talk to everyone there. Like, I love that it's just like, hey, you've just got to talk to and meet everybody, which would have been so easy to just have it be like, talk to Abdiel, start the fight, and move on. Like, I really like that it was like really like see what everyone thinks of the situation.
It very much like that's when it feels like for me the themes and like the philosophy of the game like really start to kick in, where it feels a lot more like all of these different factions, like it's now out where it's just like God is dead. Abdiel, like this has been frankly a sham this entire time that Abdiel has been aware of, but she's just been trying to keep things under control because, you know, she's trying to fulfill God's will. And now all of this is just kind of falling apart, and that moment's really good.
The other one that's not so much a moment, but that I think when I think back on, I was heavily critical of the story. What do I think that it actually did really well storytelling wise? Is the Memon. Just talking to them and how every time you find one, you're not only gaining power by like being able to get new miracles, but you learn more about Dot, and you learn more about what happened there and what the world is like now. So I was like more motivated to find them to like get more lore tidbits, I think, than I was even to find them so that I could make my party stronger.
So I'm gonna have like probably the lamest answer of like what resonated with me the most. I do love like again, like I'm sure the amount of like work that went into actually making all 200 of the Memon not just be a copy paste was such a pain in the butt, which I appreciated. The thing for me, and this is such a weird thing that this scene has always really resonated with me through like all of my playthroughs, is that I love the scene in the school / the second area, specifically with Dazai running away, then coming to terms with running away, and then watching how everyone reacted about him running away. Because it was one of those things of just being like, no one calls him a coward. It's never played for jokes. It's very much like, hey, at any point, anyone here can die. It's a very real stakes thing. And what I liked so much about that was one of those situations of, again, not playing into character stereotyping, but then also being really down to earth in such a over-the-top kind of story and setting, because it's one of those things of like, yeah, you would, like, he's the most new to the situation. Yes, he can summon demons, and yes, he's having help, but even someone like as demanding and kind of expecting so much as Abdiel doesn't like hold it against him. Like, she's not even like playing favorites with him just because he's new or whatever. Like, it's one of those situations of just being like, hey, we all know what you're going through. Like, everyone in that game has probably had a moment where they were like, oh my god, I don't want to die, and I don't want to throw my life away. And I thought that scene was just handled so well in terms of, like, showing how genuinely scared for his life was while also hating himself. Because you know that even though you weren't there and you probably weren't going to save the day, there's that 1% chance you could have helped save her, and you weren't there to make that happen. And I liked how that, like led to his character evolution feeling very natural. Because, like, I think as we get later on in this game, like, it'll be very easy to meme that scene in the fourth area of just being like, lol, he just takes his hat off and then he becomes super badass. It's like, no, like, that felt natural to me. As, like, over-the-top anime as that kind of looks, like,
Yeah.
I really liked that scene of, like, no, I can see how this dorky dweeb character would have gotten to this point. Like, he's that blindly religious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and I think you talked in the episode that you had the voice actor on. I think that's where I heard that he's sort of the guy that most reflects how most of us would react if we were put into this situation. Like, we all want to think we would be the action hero shonen protagonist, but no, most of us would be scared shitless and, just trying to survive. So
it's a nice change of pace to have to have someone who's not the main character be the fish out of water character, which is nice. So, unless anyone has a specific kind of thing they want to throw out there, I was thinking we could probably just knock out whatever questions we haven't already covered and call it a night.
Yeah,
Sure.
I love that.
All right, so the first one, and this is because we've actually just done pretty much story. A gameplay spoiler question. I'm curious how you all felt about this. Did everyone get to the fourth area and just go, holy shit, I'm 20 levels underpowered?
I definitely felt that. I felt that, and I've seen other people respond to it saying like, "Oh, this is awful." But I kind of really like that because the way I was able to like kind of handle the fact that things are way harder in this area. The way I kind of handled that is it encouraged me to explore more and do more side quests and like, okay, I'm gonna go away from the main story and just kind of explore and figure this area out and do these things. And I really like. I think Taito is my favorite area in the game, is because it was a difficulty spike, but it was one that encouraged me to like go out and explore the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt like there was a difficulty spike at the beginning of the third area and at the beginning of the fourth area where I felt like I was not prepared for this, but I agree. I liked it. I mean, I think I don't mind having to go back to the World of Shadows and do some tweaking. I don't mind having to go grind a little bit if I need to. So I liked that every new area you get into feels really dangerous. There were some of the cysts in the final area. Like even if you're in like your mid to high 70s, you get in there and you're like, oh wow, I'm way in over my head.
The level 99.
I was gonna say that level 99 one I did. I think at like level 70 something, and I remember I hadn't saved in a really long time, and I just told my wife I was like, "Oh shit!" And somehow I beat it. That was a really satisfying one. But man, that one came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I had to smoke fall out of that one. I was like,
that
nope.
one, it felt. Well, the other abscesses feel very much like, oh, this is a battle. That one felt like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm. For sure,
like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Also a middle finger, because it's like I'm going to take the 4 weakest demons in the entire game and crank them up to level 99 for you.
I would definitely say, I would say that if you approach it at the level you're kind of intended to, that is probably the hardest abscess in the game.
So the interesting thing about the level spike for me is I never viewed it as because I think there's different levels of grinding. I think Yakuza 7 there's a wall where the game makes you grind, and that's not fun, and it doesn't feel like it makes sense. Whereas
I have to warn people.
Yeah, like there's no moment like that for this game, which I think is like the kiss of death for a lot of RPGs, because like grinding is not for everybody. Pointless grinding that's mandatory is even worse. But like this game, I kind of liked it because like imagine what would happen if the first time you run into the fourth area, you do a mad dash to Odin and you kill him on your first fight. Like he wouldn't feel like a god.
Yeah.
Like it was nice to just be like, okay, this is a new level. Like, because even that Abdiel fight for me, like I had to retry a couple of times to get like my builds right. It was nice that the game always kind of felt like it like there was never a point where you're steamrolling it. Like I've said so many things about the difficulty in this game, but I think if you're understanding who normal is and who casual is for, they toned it to a really good level.
The other thing I think that is really brilliant about SMT games, and there's all these reasons that I hold them up as like this is sort of like the perfected form of the JRPG. Is that like even if you hit a wall and you have to do some grinding, it feels like you're getting ready to open a Christmas present because you've seen these silhouettes on the Demon Fusion screen, and you're like, oh, I'm only 2 levels away, or I'm only 3 levels away from being able to find out who that is and to fuse this new demon that I've never seen before. So even when you're just out grinding, it's like every level you're revealing new demons and like unlocking new ways to build your party, and they've just thought through everything that is kind of a bummer about JRPGs and figured out how to make it not a bummer. And that's why I think Atlas is just top tier in their genre.
So, next one, we kind of covered it a little bit, but I'd be curious of like more of a general consensus for the two of you. How did we feel about Lucifer's role in the story?
I'm sorry, you cut out right as you started explaining it. I had no idea what you just said.
There's
been this thing going on where you'll cut out for a second, and then it'll play you back at like warp speed, and sometimes I can hear what you said.
Oh, I would love to know what that sounds like. Thank God the recording does not do that. Okay, so I Am Mark Assassin 16 says, how did we feel about Lucifer's role in the story overall?
If either you want to go first,
He was barely in it. I mean, I said I liked the fact that like he actually killed God, and like God is not even in the game. As far as him like showing up at the very last minute, I think it was kind of a cool reveal because you are sort of wondering like what happened to him the whole game, because you see him at the battle in like the first cutscene when you first get to Dot, and then you don't see him again. I mean, you hear his voice, but you don't necessarily know it's him. up until the very end. So I thought it was kind of I thought it was effective of being like this thing in the back of your mind that you're like, okay, there's this missing puzzle piece. Where is Lucifer? What's going on with him? What is his place in all of this?
Yeah,
when you
like
actually find out what his place is, I don't know that I was that impressed with that explanation, but yeah.
I think with Lucifer, less is more, and I liked it a lot because he's very much in your face, even though he's not really in Nocturne, and even to a lesser extent, well, not even a lesser, a very different extent with 4. I liked him kind of just being like that overseer in a lot of ways. Of like, I liked how the game started with him kind of narrating and it being introduced to us in those aspects of whatnot. I obviously could have seen more with him, but I think there was like it was just enough that like it played in interesting ways while also felt like very complimentary for me.
I personally, I really liked it in the role, like the role he serves in the story and like how he's handled. Where in a lot of the games he's very like he's never like in your face, but you can feel him all throughout. In 5, there is that question of like, where is he? Like at one point, once it was like, oh, God is dead, and I was thinking about what was happening, I was like, wait, what happened with Lucifer? And that was just kind of this thing in the back of my head of like, what exactly is going on with it? And then once you find him, it's like, oh, he didn't orchestrate, but he had been watching the entire time, watching things play out, because he ultimately had a goal and he knew things were going that way. And then once you finally meet him, he's like, okay, listen, here's the plan. You're going to kill me. I want to die. Please. This is the only way to do it. And I thought that was interesting, because it's like once you finally meet him, he's just like, I just kind of want to die, but me dying would like lead to what I want. So it's like
I would have loved if there was a secret alternate ending if you let Lucifer kill you. It just like it's not like, oh cool, try again. It's like, no dude, that's another ending.
Yeah, he gets sad and then he gets real sad and then he has to wait until the next Nahobino comes around to try and kill him.
So this actually kind of goes into it. This is by Megami Tensei Quotes on Twitter. There are some who are disappointed with the game's narrative, especially in relation to more character-focused stories like Persona 5 and SMT4. Do you feel like the ideas and themes presented in 5 carry the story and the journey, even if it costed the development of certain characters? For me, I'm kind of in that camp of like, I think if you start comparing it to other things, which is obviously never really fair from any media, even in similar like developed situations, of like in terms of like, I would say a comparison isn't fair for saying SMT5 story is bad because it's not like Persona 5 story, but like in the situation of like, for me at least, taking it as it was and even reflecting on it for so long, I really liked what was there, warts and all. Because it was a story that made me think a lot, and I don't really get a lot of games that make me think. There are so many games, especially RPGs, that are either you're going through the motions, you're going through the paces, or you've been there, you've done that. And even though this has a lot of references and different nuances from other parts in the series, it was at least satisfying enough for me with the aspects missing, because it was like, it left me wanting more, but what I had still filled me up at the end of the day.
I personally, so I actually was kind of talking about this with my roommate the other day, but it was not about SMT5. It was about.
I was ready for you to say my roommate is Megami Tensei Quotes on Twitter. I was like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, no. But I was talking with my roommate about essentially this topic, but SMT5 was more of an example that I used, where he watched a really good. Not a TED Talk. Well, it might have been a TED Talk. It was something like a TED Talk, where a famous author was talking about the types of creative writing and how people tend to respond to it, and how oftentimes people will prefer very like character-driven narratives, and like that's totally fine. There's not exactly one right or wrong way to do that, but there's like character-driven narratives, and then there's more like philosophical or like thematically driven. And I find that I personally, obviously, I love a good character-driven story, but I can really appreciate a thematic story, a thematically driven one. Like Dune is, there are good characters in there, but a lot of people you don't typically gel with the characters because they aren't exactly like, super likable or anything like that.
Duncan Idaho is no Yosuke.
Yes, no. But it's a very thematically driven narrative. And I can appreciate that a lot more, where for SMT5, a big reason why I said I thought the story was really good is because I was able to kind of like, I felt like the themes presented and the ideas that were presented were able to make up for development on the character's end.
Yeah, it didn't quite make it up there for me. Obviously, I'm more of like I do like character-driven stories more. I do think the themes in SMT5 are strong. I just think that some of the lack of flair with the presentation, like we've talked before about, how it would have been awesome to see some of this stuff instead of just be told about it, even if it's like a 5-second flashback. They didn't really use camera and the animations and the music as effectively as they could to, I think, underscore those themes in a lot of places. Some parts they do. Like, I think the whole section with the throne was generally really well done in terms of, shot composition and using, music and like leitmotifs effectively. I wish they had more of that kind of spread throughout the rest of the game as well. So yeah, I think I can say at the same time, I think the themes are really strong, and I thought they were really interesting. But also, that fact that it has good, strong, interesting themes didn't make up for me for the lack of character development.
Okay, definitely. Kind of. I appreciate two things. A, that we are all kind of different in our own different ways, and we've somehow, I think, brought up Dune at least 9 times this podcast. That's really commendable.
Yeah, I didn't even mean to bring up.
Sorry, everybody. When we're not talking about
the new movie's really good. I really like it.
When we're not talking about Christopher Nolan, we're big Denis Villeneuve fans. Let me tell you about my Blade Runner thoughts.
Let's talk about sand screens. Yeah.
2049 is my favorite movie of all time. Ryan Gosling is literally me.
You look lonely, Mac. Has anyone ever told you that?
I am.
Speaking of being lonely, Urameshi Trev says favorite character in Demon. So I'm gonna make it easy because I've said mine a bajillion times, and I'm like one step away from making a fucking anime AMV about them. I guess at this point they're just called TikToks now. Demon for sure has to be Idun. I thought Idun was such a awesome design, and she is just so OP with the golden apples. Like, as soon as I got her, I was like, okay, you're the best, and the breast. What else, though? Also, very, very weird pick for me, because I'm actually not normally a huge fan of the blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of like girl motif thing, but I think because of the ties to Nordic mythology, it really like pushed it over the edge for me, that like made it worth it. Character, I really, really like, and this is so not fair because like there's so much more I would have wanted with it, but like for whatever reason, I like if you told me that there was just going to be a Koshimizu spin-off game, I would be there. Like I wanted at least 9 more hours of cutscenes with just like Koshimizu, even before I found out they were Tsukuyomi.
I think I kind of already said what my favorite character was earlier with Dazai, but for favorite demon, I think I'd have to go with Fionn McCool, even if that might be an easy answer because he
was awesome.
Oh my god,
He's
what a
cool
great
guy.
What a great boss fight, both of them. Those were such fun fights.
But I just really like his design. It feels very much like that perfect balance between the cool factor, but also like mythologically accurate. The only thing about him that I would have changed is they absolutely chickened out on the fact that he sucks his thumb. obviously, it'd be hard to have a cool guy who kisses his thumb and have like the average person think that guy's still cool.
I like that they at least leaned into it of like, hey, when that thumb goes in his mouth, you're fucked.
Yeah. Where like what it was, they changed it so he kisses it. I think a way.
Really, I viewed it as he's like, I still viewed it as like he's still sucking it, but it's more of like a kind of thing.
Oh no. In his little bio, it says he kisses it. He kisses his thumb.
That's like a little more. That's a little more like he's doing a little like.
Yeah, he's doing a little bit. What I think they should have done, and it would have easily still have been like cool, but also have been more. He's still putting his thumb in his mouth. Is he has to bite his thumb? I think that would have been.
I thought they were gonna do that with the whole thing because if you notice, his thumb is red, so I kind of thought that was like him, like the blood from his thumb on there.
Yeah, I think if they had him bite his thumb as opposed to kiss it, I think that would have.
Then they would have offended all of England. They can't have you biting thumbs at people, man. All those Doctor Who fans are gonna get real upset.
Personally, if I was in charge, I'd just have him suck his thumb. I would just go full blown like, nah, screw it. You can have a cool guy who sucks his thumb. Why not?
Yeah, but then you'd give other people who are gonna put the Rugrats music on there, and then no one will take them seriously.
Yeah, that's great.
This man is already fighting an uphill battle by not only having 3 words in his name, but also having the word just come, just right there in his name. He's having a hard time already without the thumb sucking.
His name is Fionn Mac Cool, and that makes me feel good because my name is Mac.
That is true.
There you go.
What else we got?
Yeah, I think I already kind of talked about my favorite characters. As far as favorite demons, I also really liked Idun. She stayed as my healer for the whole game. I actually went through the ending the first time with a party of all Norse gods. So I had Thor as my physical damage dealer, I had Idun as my healer, and I had Skadi as my caster. And then I really like Yoshitsune. He was like my boy for like the whole mid game. Yoshitsune is awesome.
So we kind of went over this one, but 11 asked a good point that I can't ever stop jerking off this game. So any favorite or notable performances with the English voice cast that stood out that we haven't talked about? I know it's been said to death, but I really do want to like give a pat on the back, as much of a shill as this probably sounds. I really do think as good of a job as you can do with a silent protagonist, Casey brings a very interesting like sound to that.
I definitely agree. I think Casey did a really good job. Personally, I think I said this earlier. Stuart Allen as Dazai, I think just had the best performance. He really sold me on Dazai, and he does a great job. I will say at first I had never seen anything Stuart had been in, but and when I first heard Dazai, I was like, oh, that's not the voice I expected to come out of that face. But as time goes on, it becomes a lot harder for me to not hear that voice coming from him.
Are you guys playing English? What a bunch of lamers! No.
Oh man, don't make me throw the proverbial book at you. I'll be like, excuse me.
I'm totally kidding. Yeah, I don't think they didn't even have the Japanese.
There was no. I would love it. I would love it if you were such a snob. You replied back to the Atlas email. I'm gonna need a JP code. I'm not playing this shit in English.
I've gotten like 1 or 2 comments on my video of people being like, ugh, people like I didn't know people played the English dub, and it's like, 1, I do play the English dub because generally I like them, and 2, I had no choice. Yeah,
exactly. I do think people should play back through with both, because some of the Japanese voices are great too. But other than the people we've mentioned, I do think the voice actors for Abdiel did a really good job with that character.
Oh yeah, Sissy. Sissy does a really good job with that.
That whole characterization, and I don't know who did Lamu, but like both the like sort of, I mean, it's like a death metal growl, but I think the performance and the effects layering that they slapped on top of it was really effective for creating a very freaky ass villain for sort of the middle part of the game.
Well, everybody, It's been like 2 hours, but I think we actually, I think we made it to the end of somehow not a 3-hour-long spoiler cast. So, Mac and Lynn, thank you so much for letting me steal your Tuesday nights. I feel like, especially because this is my second spoiler cast, oddly enough, I feel like a weight has been lifted off of me. Of like, I've gotten like so much out of this game now in terms of talking about it, and I know like it's not going to stop anytime soon, but it's just kind of funny of just being like, now that this is out there or will be out there within a couple of days, it's very nice. So I can't thank both of you enough for taking the time and letting me drag both of you on here. I really appreciate kind of all the different kind of angles we all kind of came here. It didn't feel like anyone was very yes and.
Well, one, you're welcome, and two, I'm not going to let you get away without reading off KDA's question.
Oh, hold on. What was KDA's question? Did I miss KDA's question?
If you want, I can read it for you.
Please read it up. I actually had one question saved just for you, but that can wait. What was KDA's question?
KDA's question was, could we get Maka to comment on his virility supplements that he's marketing? Please and thank you.
Oh! I didn't... Was that, like, hidden from me? I, like, legit didn't even have that on there. No, please, tell us about your virility supplements there, Joe Rogan.
So what it is I have a very weak penis, and I came up with these pills that make it a lot better.
I really hope someone just clips that out with no context needed.
Go for it. But I came up with these pills. They're not FDA approved, but they certainly make me feel good. So if anyone wants one, they are called Maca, M-A-C-A, Maca or whatever. And you can buy them by donating to my Patreon and helping me buy that new motherboard.
Jesus. Well, motherboards are very cheap and inexpensive these days. Actually, our real final question, unfortunately, was not going to be about penis supplements. Monoplush did want to ask, Mac, are you going to shill for the Chainsaw anime when it releases? Sorry, for the Chainsaw Man anime.
I already am, and there's a part of me that really wants to do a video on it, but that's not gonna. The algorithm's not gonna jive with that. But I might do it anyway.
All $30 we make on all of our very lucrative YouTube videos.
That's the true destroy the throat ending. Is we have to destroy the
destroy the algorithm.
We gotta destroy the algorithm. Let me talk about Chainsaw Man.
Oh my god. Do what you want, man. Listen, I followed up all my SMT5 videos with like 6 people watching me play Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires. Just live your life. Don't let anyone tell you what's viable.
Hell yeah.
So, I'm gonna go last for where everyone can find us, even though I've desperately got to use the restroom because I apparently have the bladder of a 17-year-old. So, Mac, besides your penis supplements and your Patreon, where can people find you online and your bad algorithm?
So you can find me on YouTube at Maka SMT, and then you can find me on Twitter and like basically everywhere else, but I don't know where else other than Twitter. Would be it would be JBO Maka.
And Lynn, for you, when can we expect to read those Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross preview impressions?
Well, my Twitter is Tilfolkvang, TILFOLKVANG, and usually I post most of my articles there. If you can wade through all the shit posts, it's probably like a 90-10 ratio. But yeah, the previews I was talking about, if you are listening to this as like a Patreon person, should be going up on IGN. Basically, the embargo is like when we show the trailer on the Game Awards, you can post the article, so I don't know exactly when they're going up, but it'll be someone will hit play when the time is right. And those
are always the weirdest embargoes, aren't they? When they're tied to a live event, like when it's like, okay, everyone hold, because then you're like playing that double edge of like, at least when it comes to embargoes, like you're playing the game of making sure you posted the right time, but also checking to see what asshole posted it early just so they could be first.
Yeah, that always happens.
Wait, am I learning that there's going to be something Chrono Trigger related at the Game Awards?
Yes, it's going to be a first-person remake only in Unity for VR.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
So unfortunately, everyone can be disappointed about all of that later, but Let me think. What else? I thought there's something else I was going to say. No, I think I'm just starting to now have just hot flashes and blacking out. So, hey, if you liked this, please comment wherever you are. I would love, like, for someone at, like, Christmas 2022, someone's like, I finally beat the game and I just got to listen to this. I went back. I always do wonder, like, because there's always those things of, like, putting a spoiler cast up too soon or too late. Like, I was making fun of our mutual friend Yarly. He originally planned on putting up his spoiler cast, like, the day the game came out. And I was like, those always are just, like, that's, like, just a target for just don't listen to me. Please, everyone, ignore me, because you physically couldn't have been done with the game by now, and ignore my things. But then it's obviously, like, how far after, how soon, when is too soon? Because by the time this comes out, the game will be out, or at least on free feeds, the game will have been out for a month. So I kind of thought that's like a good balance of time for everyone. Even though I know there's still so many people who like are just picking up the game. But the funny thing about that though is like, looking at those people who are like, I'm going to hold on to this, keep it in my back pocket for years. Like a weird one for me is like, I still haven't beaten Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm like, I'm going to listen to this one spoiler cast. I'm going to be really late to it, but I'm going to finally fucking get to this spoiler cast one day. One day I'll be able to hear what Nate Fox thinks of this goddamn game. But if you want to be a little bit more timely, or for other videos, or just to make fun of me for talking about Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, because no one else is, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Torchwood4SP. The podcast is at SMT Network, way more active there. If you would like, you can subscribe on YouTube just by searching Spencer Presley or Shin Megami Tensei Network. Links below for everything. We've got a Discord, a Facebook group. Besides that, I have to plug the Facebook group because we're almost to 10K, and I love the fact that, because as much as people always dunk on Facebook, there are still so many people who use Facebook, and I think until Facebook nukes itself, I could never let go of it, because that is like how this podcast started in terms of like people talking, and the community started there, even though it's now like spread through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, not Instagram. We're not that cool yet. But yeah, so join it wherever you want. Oh, I know which one. I should have done this probably at the beginning of the show, but I'm a fucking imbecile. We're doing an awards show, but only for Atlas stuff. So if you would like to vote in the Atlas 2021 awards, there will be a form directly below this, no matter where you're watching or listening to it. You have until Christmas to fill it out. It is voting on at least 20 actual questions, and then one survey question at the bottom about what did you think was the best game, from Strikers to Nocturne to SMT5, best voice actor, best moment, best soundtrack, all that fun jazz. And of course, because I made this poll, of course I had to put best Steelbook, because who else is going to make a best Steelbook award for fucking Game of the Year?
Yeah, only you would.
So please, get as many people to vote in that thing as possible. The response has been awesome, but it's just been very funny just to watch as many people take it as seriously as I did. Making those forms are not fun. Watching the results is a million times more fun, though. So thankfully, everybody is making it worth it. And then finally, speaking of making it worth it, if you'd like to make this show financially worth it, you can go to patreon.com/SMTN, where you can support the show for $1 to be a fan, or you can be a $5 and up tier to be an SMTN executive producer. Now, because I have one of our executive producers here with Lynn, I want you to know, no other person's name, except maybe my friend Patrick, makes me think I'm saying their first and last name wrong every week in a different way. I just want you to know, I don't know why your name doesn't look that hard to say, but your name always makes me think it's hard.
That's why I always just tell people to call me Len. That's what my friends call me. So it's like, Len is super easy. You don't have to worry about it. So... yeah.
All right, I will condition my brain. I have a couple of people through Patreon who will, like, they won't change their name on Patreon or remind me, but then after the show goes live, they'll be like, hey, you should call me this next time. And I'll be like, okay, I feel very bad because you paid me money and I just said your name wrong, but I'll pretend that doesn't ruin my entire week.
It's the most affordable executive producer credit I've ever bought.
Oh, let me tell you, like, I should yeah, trust me, we're just giving these executive producer things away. Back in the day, I think I actually unironically had a friend who had an IMDb for something, and they did put that on their IMDb until someone asked them, like, wait, what did you produce with this podcast? because it was the only EP credit they had on their IMDb, and like if someone asked it enough, and they were like, I gotta take this off.
I literally produce 2 podcasts, and I don't even get an executive producer credit on those.
You know what? That's true. We should get into the thing of, besides putting pronouns and what you work on in your bio, we need to put what I've donated money to as like a thing. Like we need to make like a 3rd tier on Twitter and be like, I send money to these places. Like
here's a CV of all of my Patreon credits. Yeah.
It's like, here's who I donate to, here's who I kickstarted, here's my Fig credits, here's where
all the RPG books that I'm in the back of,
Here's my uncredited games for all those times the developers forget to patch in my name. Here's my OnlyFans subscriptions, not my OnlyFans, the OnlyFans I subscribe to. Those are also publicly available, and all of your NFT purchases.
I don't know about you guys, but I have my name attached to a 1 mighty number 9.
Ooh!
Oh, there you go.
I bet that's gonna mean a lot.
If that doesn't get you laid, if that doesn't get you the most passive aggressive hand job at a bar, I don't know what will. and then when she says, "How was it?" you can just look at her and go, "It's better than nothing." But if you would like me to say your name probably wrong on a weekly basis, yes, you could be an SMTN executive producer at the $5 and up tier, just like these wonderful, beautiful people. Just like Jagingus, Cross Renren, Dozy Bear, Jazzy Jefferson, K Horace, Lynn, Patrick Dissart, Philip Myers, Shisho, Solaire, Cameron Sharp, Womp Womp Womp, Robert Dogman, Magadillis, and everyone else is super awesome. I was thinking there was somebody else, but that's pretty much how my brain always reads that same list off. So, thank you all you awesome patrons. Thank you all you awesome people for listening or watching to this disaster of a spoiler cast. I hope you all enjoyed it. And Mac and Lynn, I now at least owe you, I'm sure, like 19 favors. So whenever you guys want to invite me on your podcast for a hostage situation, you can pull that trump card at any time.
I will absolutely invite you on my podcast I don't have.
What do you... Dude, you're starting one next year, the Chainsaw Man Podcast Man.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, if you play any strategy games, listen,
I had a very long tirade all about Civilization Revolution 2+.
Okay, yeah, that's the kind of stuff we go for. So, yeah.
All right, well, enough e-begging and reminding everybody. Clearly, like, we're drunk now at this point. So goodbye, everybody, and have a good rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Best bring more maca next time.
Oh my god! All right, well, let's clip that out. Throw that as the blooper, and never discuss this again. Now.
Hell yeah.